Welcome to the Recovery Stories podcast, bringing you stories of hope, healing, and triumph over the bondage of addictions, mental health struggles, trauma, and dysfunctional family systems. Our courageous storytellers have chosen to live their journey out loud in order to show others that they don't have to suffer in silence. The stories you will hear are raw, real, and may involve graphic and triggering content. This podcast is brought to you by Promises Behavioral Health's Rooted alumni community. If you or a loved one are struggling, have questions, or are ready to take the next step, call our admission center at 888-648-4098. Or visit us online at www.promisesbehavioralhealth.com. Our team is ready and waiting to answer the call for help.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Rooted Recovery Stories. My name is Patrick Custer and I am your host. I'm so excited, extra excited to get things kicked off today. For this episode, we've got somebody so special here to share with you today, and I just can't wait to hear his story from a different perspective and introduce him to y'all. He's one of the funniest people I've ever seen and a true hero in the world of comedy due to his openness about his recovery. I'd like to welcome at this time writer, actor, phenomenal comedian, Zach Noe Towers.
Yes. Hi, Patrick. How are you?
Hi. I'm great, thank you. Yeah. And even better now that we're here today. It is National Recovery Month, and it's one of my favorite times of year because for people like us, we get just that extra opportunity to really spotlight and showcase and speak out and be open about all things recovery. And it feels like the world is listening a little bit more than usual.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. Even like I would say mental health has become has been in the spotlight the past few years. There's another comedian, Taylor Tomlinson, whose recent Netflix special, she talks all about her mental health journey. And it's like very cool to see like a very popular comic on Netflix talk about, you know, going to a psychiatrist and not having shame around that and like, you know, getting better. So
absolutely. Yeah. So, at Promises, which is our parent company that runs this podcast, we are talking about this year for Recovery Month, what it means to be recovery ready, which is, an interesting term, but one we're throwing around because, every year we pick a theme to talk about National Recovery Month in a different way. But no matter what you're recovering from, whether it's substances, process addiction, mental health disorders, there are themes that are so very important that we have to wake up every day and choose to remember and utilize as the day goes on, like to protect our recovery, and things like openness and, breaking stigma that we're doing all month long can help with that. But I kind of wanted to ask you, what are just to kick things off, what are some of those things that help you even today in your walk of recovery to stay centered and healthy?
Sure. Stay further away from a drink. I mean, I was like a drinker, drug user. I like obviously substituted things like men, caffeine, sugar, food. But for me, it's really become all about doing less more often. So it like something I've done since the beginning of my sobriety, so like over 6 years, is I make my bed every morning. And that might be a cliche at this point, but like I even make hotel beds because it's like a little tiny victory. It's an esteemable act that makes my room look nicer and it makes me feel good. And it's like, I won't get back into bed, because it looks nice and it's made. And like I try to meditate, but I want to be honest and say that like I'm on a meditation journey, but like I do 5 minutes and sometimes it's horrible. Sometimes I'm literally thinking about myself the whole time, but it's having the willingness to do these small things that lead to more. Like it's like, I we have is now, and there are only so many things you can do now. So life has really become about these small decisions that I try to make. I may still make dumb decisions. I still like lose afternoons to Netflix sometimes. Like, I'm not perfect. I'm not going to scold myself, but like, for if you're, it's like you order the salad with the burger instead of the fries. You get out of
Yeah.
bed instead of hitting snooze. You go to the gym instead of like saying, "Oh, I'll do something later," because like that's not later's not real. So I try
Mhm.
to be very present, and I try to make tiny decisions that will make my life better and take me further away, closer to recovery and farther away from, active like using.
So I love all of that, but in my journey of recovery, one thing I've identified as a constant for me is I call them little truth nuggets, the guiding posts that I pick up from different people when I hear them. And one that I just heard from you, that I'm not going to forget, is it's the little things that we have the willingness or choose the willingness to do that lead to more, because it's like we are always one directional. There's no stagnation
Mm-hmm.
in life, but in recovery and a wellness journey, we're going one way or the other. And you just put it so concisely. Like, I love that so much. I'm definitely going to remember that.
Yeah. What's
So
your journey been like? You're sober?
yeah. I got sober in February 16th of 2011.
Oh my
And
gosh. Oh my gosh. You're over 10.
yeah. I'm like,
That's so
you
cool.
know what's weird is, I mean, I realize I'm not old, and I lie about my age all the time. I get flack for anybody that knows me personally is gonna blast me after this podcast episode if they're watching, because nobody knows my real age because I'm constantly lying about it. But the longer and longer I've stayed sober, and especially when I hit that 10-year mark, it's funny
Mm-hmm.
how that in and of itself, because I remember when I was a baby sober, which that definition of what being a baby in sobriety
Oh my
changed along
God.
the way for me so
Yeah.
much, but especially looking back. But I remember, first getting sober and seeing the person with 4 or 6 months sobriety and thinking, oh my gosh, this is a recovery giant right here. This
Yeah.
person has got their life together. I can't imagine getting to that point,
Yeah.
and so, when I hit the 10-year mark of sobriety in and of itself, I'm like, let alone my earthly age, like that just made me feel old, but nothing else than gratitude. So what is your how long have you been sober?
I got sober November 27th, 2015. So I'm
Awesome.
approaching 7. It
Early
was a
congratulations.
Thank you. I was a Thanksgiving baby. Because I spent my last Thanksgiving like kind of being like a worthless sack of shit, Like, I
Mhm.
came late, hungover, with like the store bought buns or whatever, and I like ate some raw stuffing and I fell asleep on the couch. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I wasn't a menace, but I was not a contributing member of that celebration, And
Yeah.
Black Friday, oh no, it was on Thanksgiving that like I was like, I'm not going to drink today because I'm so hungover from last night. And I was just, I had all of a sudden I had a glass of red wine in my hand and I couldn't even remember how I got it. And I was like, okay, I had been trying to stop, and I think it was just my last straw. I was like, yeah, and so Black Friday was my first day
Mm.
sober. I stayed no relapse in my story. I mean, not that it's a big deal. Not that, please, like, if you're listening and if you relapse, don't let anyone shame you into not coming back. But I'm grateful that I haven't relapsed.
I know we're constantly hearing comparisons to chronic illnesses, but it really metaphors and comparisons really help my brain like conceive new ideas and reframe things the appropriate
Mm-hmm.
way. So I'm going to go back to that, what somebody shared with me. If we were to compare this to cancer, which is, I like using that better than diabetes. I mean, not that diabetes can't be absolutely horribly fatal, but all right. So if we're talking about somebody who's got cancer, right,
Mhm.
and they've got go into remission and what have you,
And then it
and
comes
we're
back.
celebrating and they're so
Yeah.
great and we're so happy, and it comes back and a relapse happens. We're sad, and but we know it's part of the disease, and we don't give up on them or hope for the fact that there is healing available and tools that can help them get better. And so I think that this black or white thinking that society and or the recovery community tries to push on us in regard to um, thinking about relapse, that black and white thinking is so harmful, because the truth is it is a disease, and we should celebrate the fact that people such as yourself and myself haven't had to endure relapse as
Yeah.
part of our
Right.
story.
We've stayed
But
in remission or whatever. Yeah.
exactly. But it's a real thing and it happens. And I think at the same time, stigma's got to be broken for those people that relapse this part. It is so real, and it is a thing, and there should be no more shame or no less value in the recovery story of that person than you and I.
I completely agree. And it's very perfectly arranged in my mind, because I've heard people with 32 years speak and wanted nothing that they had, and I've heard
Hmm.
people with 7 months speak, and I'm like, wow,
Yep.
it does not matter how long you are sober. It matters how like earnestly you're trying to, for me, work the program. I'm in AA. I don't know if we're supposed to talk about that, but like I've kind of I don't know. I try not. I'm not speaking for AA when I say that. I'm just saying that's the recovery program that I utilized.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of being open, I want to ask you this before we go through the timeline of your life. For so much of us, when we get sober, we get confronted with the question of, what's, I guess the funny and ironic thing for me is, when I think about like everybody pretty much, I feel like for most of us, knows that we are problematically either using or drinking before we get sober. But for whatever reason, admitting defeat, which is what I feel like most of us feel when we say we've transferred into sobriety and we're now in recovery.
Mm-hmm.
That's the tendency,
That's
there's
the
that.
that's the vibe. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, so, that conversation that we have with ourselves, are we going to be open? When are we going to be open? Who are we going to be open with? Everybody has to go through that. But you, as a public figure and a comedian, have navigated that decision. And not only are you open to the public about it, but what I wanted to bring up, and I hope that this is okay, because it's not talking about your material or anything, but when I went to see you at your show, you so eloquently self-disclosed that you are in recovery. And I mean, I wanted to stand up and cheer,
Oh,
because that meant so much to me, the way that you chose to self-disclose that. Because 11 years now of being sober, I've noticed that you get different reactions from people. 99% of them are all positive, but one consistent that I experience is people all of a sudden get their own shame and guilt about their own consumption
mm-hmm,
patterns.
mm-hmm.
And so I can only imagine that you've had to have somewhat of a dialogue with yourself about how do I talk about that outwardly and not push shame onto other people and keep it all on my own. Like, I just love to hear where you came from, what your thought process was,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
all of that.
for sure, for sure. Well, first of all, I'm so glad that you enjoyed the way I spoke about it. I don't. I think I've only scratched the surface in what I will talk about on stage in regards to sobriety and recovery at this point in my story, I'm making light of it. I'm kind of self-deprecating. I talk about how I'm still kind of messy. But like, I shout my sobriety from the rooftops because I owe everything I have to my sobriety. Everything. The way I think, the way I act, the way I move about the world, like it's all because of sobriety and my recovery program. It really has recalibrated my brain to like continue striving for things that I want, but remaining extremely grateful for the things that I have. Wow, that would have been nice if I hadn't like butchered it. But like, so like with as a comedian, I started comedy when I was still drinking and using. So a lot of things I said on stage were not true. They were for shock value. They were
Wait, how unlike a comedian? I mean, what? What?
They were just, but what I found was, of course, there was this painful transition when I was newly sober where I didn't have my drink and a shot before going on stage. So I felt, but then I started hearing audiences and being in tune with the room instead of like on my own little wacky path. And then I stopped being able to lie on stage. Like I had to tell the truth, because one thing sobriety has given me is this cringy pain whenever I am approaching a lie. I cannot lie anymore. And it causes for some awkward situations where I'll like, I'll have to bow out of the date. I'll have to walk away from the friend. I'll have to, you know what I mean? I'm just like, I can't lie. Like when I'm uncomfortable, I have to express why. I mean, I try to run it through my own filter first, but like, I have to tell people why I'm acting the way I'm acting, because I at least owe them that much. But with comedy, it's just like my stand-up is an extension of me. And so because I go to meetings all the time and I sponsor people and I participate in my sobriety, I have to talk about it on stage.
Yeah.
And then in regards to what you said about the awkward reactions you get, of course, I think it's worse in early sobriety because at least for me, I was still trying to go to the places I used to go, which is, I live in West Hollywood. I existed in a 2-block strip of bars, from 23 to 30. Like that's where I spent a lot of my time. And so I was still trying to stay there. And of course, those people are going to be uncomfortable by my now sober presence, and it's going to turn a mirror on them. And why'd you get well, why aren't you drinking? Well, wait, why? Why? And I didn't have answers in early sobriety, or none that I could articulate with any like grace. And so now when I encounter those people, I love it. I love encountering an awkward person because I'm so confident and calm that I just get to let them have their experience, maybe ask me some questions. Maybe we get to a point in the conversation where I go, I mean, I'm happy to tell you more if you want to know more, like take my number down or text me. But I often, when I get those people, they're like, yeah, I think maybe I should be sober. They're cross-eyed drunk. And I'm like, like, honestly, this was the last rung on my ladder. Like, if you can do what you're doing and you're happy, keep doing it. Like, keep having fun. Go do your thing.
Absolutely.
Like, if I could drink in moderation and have one night a month where I just like kind of got silly, I love it, but I can't. I've done all the research I need to do. And now my purpose is just to kind of, it's that whole lighthouse thing where it's like, we're like light guiding people to the shore. Like we can't necessarily go out there where the storm is and like pull the ship in, but we can be a lighthouse and like be like, this way, bitch,
Yeah, I love that. This way, bitch. Well, the way that you mentioned exactly what you said, it's, you talk about it on stage in an almost self-deprecating way, but not. So the truth be told, it is one of those things that I love and embrace in my personal life is that we are all an effing mess.
Yeah.
And so we learn to embrace it, even in sobriety. Like sobriety
Mm-hmm.
doesn't make us all of a sudden
Mm-mm.
perfect, right? Like, and like, sure, we're doing those little things along the way, the willingness to do better, to that brings us to the place of more and self-discovery. But I think the key unlocking joy and a desire to stay sober is embracing the authenticity of the mess. And that is what I think that you do and what you talk about that just kind of disarms people from the stage. I saw your show with a group of normies who were all drinking and having fun, and I asked them afterwards. I said, so how did you feel about, like when he self-disclosed? Was it one of those things that, whatever? And they were like, no, it was totally such great feedback. The same thing that as a recovering person, I assumed as well. And so I just wanted to bring that up because as a guidepost, as just some fodder for people to think and talk about, in all of our own journey, whoever may be recovering or on your path to recovery,
Yeah.
that's a big thing for all of us. So,
I yeah, I love that. What you just like sparked for me is that I feel like I went from being a know-it-all to like very proud of not knowing
yeah,
anything. And I love asking like why or how or like I don't understand or like yeah, like I did this dumb thing. Let's examine why I did it because I think there's like a
mhm,
stubbornness and like a sweep under the rug and there's no one wants to admit that they are, unmanageable or maybe insane or you know what I mean?
right,
So I found so much humility in sobriety. And then you can be playful about it because you're like, yeah, like I'm disgusting. Like I do some stupid shit, but I'm willing to admit that it's stupid, and that's
right.
like, yeah, like you just said, it's embracing the messiness.
Well, and I have to think that as a comedian, once you've reached what we're talking about, it's double serving because you get so much more material that you can use, and you probably don't have to work that hard because it unrolls itself. Uh,
Truly.
yeah, yeah. Well, okay, so we spent a good amount of time talking about so many wonderful things, but I want to dive into just take a little bit of time to talk about the story of your life.
Yeah,
So, like, where were you born, and the family that you were born into? Can you share a
totally.
little bit about that
Yeah,
with us?
absolutely. I was born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri. The middle of three kids, Irish Catholic family. Had like 30 cousins on my dad's side, and like they were jovial drinkers, and it was very like grandma playing flip cup, kegs at communion, which if you don't know is like a second graders, you know, thing in the Catholic Church. Like it's the celebration for a second grader. It's like why are there kegs here? So it
Wow.
never felt like if I was going to drink. It always felt like when was I going to drink?
Hmm.
And I think like obviously I don't blame my alcoholism on anything, but being a little gay boy in the Midwest in the 90s was not cool. It was very isolating, feeling different, feeling scared to be myself. I like retreated within, like I like my mind was the safest place or like escaping into TV and film. People say fantasies are their first like addiction when they're younger. And it was just very like, it was a very like, I'm sure everyone's childhood is a confusing place to be, but I will say being gay felt like a little like I felt in danger sometimes. It was just like a tumultuous landscape. And so when I
How old
first,
were you? How old were you when you knew that you were gay?
oh, 5. I mean, like looking back,
Really?
like okay, I was a pervert when I was 5 years old. We used to have this place called the Discovery Zone. It's so ironic. It's like a play place with like tunnels and slides and ball pits and stuff. And
Hmm.
I used to wrap my arms and legs around the male attendants, like legs, and look up their shorts because I was like, I want what's up there. You know,
You were curious.
I was a
Yeah.
little, yes. Anyway, but I've been drawn to men, it's the same sex since I was very young. I came out, I had a soft coming out when I was 16, in which I told friends. And then I had a hard coming out when I went to college when I was 18. But, I started drinking when I was 15, and I was a binge drinker from the start. I think the first night I drank, I threw up bile. Like
The bottom of the barrel of your stomach.
Bottom of it, just like dry heaving, like just like weird stuff coming out. But when I drank, it was like I could finally relax. My brain stopped going so fast. I felt comfortable at the party. I could talk to people. I perceived myself as funnier, more likable. I had all my first sexual experiences under the guise of drugs and alcohol. And like it seamlessly just fused with my personality. And then by senior year, I was bringing like greyhounds to school, like in the morning, like vodka grapefruits in my like coffee traveler mug. And it's like, it wasn't like I needed it. It's like I wanted it. I was like, this is so much fun. Like, this is such a life hack.
Sure.
And then college, I went to a party school and just more, moved to California. I had all these lines in the sand about drugs, did cocaine, Molly, never did the hard stuff like meth or heroin. And I'm so thankful I didn't. But, yeah, and I feel like I went to the bars when I was 22 and I woke up on my 30th birthday and I was so depressed for the younger version of myself who had all these hopes and dreams, and I hadn't accomplished any of them, like none of them. There's nothing wrong with waiting tables. I was waiting tables when I wanted to do so much more. And I didn't believe anything that came out of my mouth because I had spent so many nights going, okay, after work, I'm going to write my blank, or after work, I'm going to do this. And then after work, I'd have a glass of wine with coworkers. Then we'd have tequila. Then we'd have Coke. Then I'd wake up in a stranger's bedroom, on the other side of town.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I didn't have any self-esteem. I didn't believe in myself. I did not know which way was up. And I was really sad about that. And so I stopped drinking. My friend took me to a meeting. And my sobriety was so slow. They say slow-briety, but like that first meeting, the speaker made me laugh and he made me cry. And he gave me what I now recognize as faith, just enough faith to check out another meeting. And I went to another meeting, and then I was like, I'd hear one thing and I'd go to another meeting and I'd be like, oh, and then I got to the point where I was like, these people can't all be lying. Like, they can't all be just like, woo, like, and it was like people who went from like sex work or went from like a bad home life or went from, extreme loss to feeling so happy and grateful, and I was seeing these journeys and I was seeing these transformations, and I just I got a sponsor after 6 months, and the steps took me over a year to get through. I just dragged my feet, and I still drag my feet a little bit, but I used to spend this much time in resistance and this much time in faith. And now I spend this much time in faith and this much time in resistance. It's been like,
that's good.
It's been like one fills up the other. And I've all of this beautiful proof that this way works. And this is the side I'd rather be on.
Absolutely. So, yeah. Okay, so you just you lit so many fires, and I got the first one that I want to tackle that I just love so much has to really relates with the mission of this show. Okay, so for me, in early sobriety, I could not relate with you more. My drugs of choice were really uppers and alcohol. mainly alcohol, but lots of uppers. And I
Yeah,
am ADD to the max before, pre addiction, during addiction, and after addiction, especially
sure.
when you took everything away from me.
Oh
I
my
couldn't
God.
focus on anything. But what I could focus on were the little, I would sit in meetings and draw or do whatever to keep myself occupied, but I would hear those little nuggets from somebody's story that would catch my attention, and um, I would be able to relate to them. And soon enough, I would be able to piece each of so many of those together to provide a chunk of
Hmm.
hope that I would be able to latch onto, that
Hmm.
started to put together the building blocks that allowed me to establish a foundation for recovery. And it was people's stories for me. It's not that for everybody necessarily, but I think for a lot of people it is. And so that's, I get so excited and fired up about talking about the importance of being open, those of us who choose to, like yourself, and tell your story, because I think that it's that I mean, it's like an endless, you'll never know how many people this specific podcast, every time you get open about it, how many people that you're affecting the trajectory of their life. And it's spiritual, it's magical, I mean, it's whatever you want to call it, it is miraculous.
Hmm.
And so I love that you touched on that.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And, early on in what you were saying, you mentioned something, and I've never heard it phrased this way, but you said that it was like you viewed it like a really convenient life hack,
Hmm.
a really convenient life hack. And the reason why I just want to mention that and bring it up is because I also super duper relate to that for the first chunk of my addiction career. And I think that so many of us do, because, uh, we don't, they say it's fun until it's not anymore, right? But I think that whole perspective that you talk about of like, you have your first drink, your first drug or whatever, and for so many of us it goes through our mind and we're like, hold on, this really is like, this is there's nothing not positive about this.
It's
It's a
it's the
tool that
it's the first tool. It's the first, because it drugs and alcohol have their place. Those
yeah.
people who like they're very nervous and they have like a drink to like just call. That's kind of an accurate, like, okay, great. It was the first tool I picked up that was like, whoa,
Hmm.
this works. Like,
Hmm.
no one told me about meditation in 2002. You know what I mean? Like, no one was saying
Yeah.
like meditate. No, my parents weren't taking me to a therapist or a psychiatrist. Like, I was fumbling in the dark, not only, not even for like gay role models or like a positive gay experience, just to survive as a teenager, and drugs. And have you heard Magic Medicine Misery? It
No, I
starts,
haven't.
oh my God, it starts as magic. You're like, whoa, what is this?
Mm.
Medicine, you need it to go, to function,
Hmm.
I needed it to go to gay bars when I was in my 20s. Like, I had to be drinking before I entered the gay bar to feel
Hmm.
comfortable. And then misery. You're drinking and you don't know why. You're drinking and
So
you
true.
it's like you're caught in this loop, or you're caught in an undertow or whatever
Hmm.
that is, and you just don't know which way is up.
Mm.
Yeah.
So true. What that also reminds me what you said of, I was recently watching an interview with RuPaul where he talked about who he's like 20 some years sober as well. And um, I think it was Jimmy Fallon. Somebody was interviewing him about it, and he said, um, "N- "No, I don't regret my addiction career. I don't
Mhm.
regret. I really don't live in the land of regrets for my life. Um, I'm focusing on what everything that life has given me and my life experiences. I had some of the best times on, drugs and alcohol. Not that I'm advocating that people should go use it, but it was part of my story. And it's the same for you, and and it's the same for me. And the more important thing is that recovery has become part of our story. And for those of us who need it, it's possible and it's there. And I think it's that's a thing that we have so much work to do. I think that those of us who choose to continue doing it will never we'll never not have work to do in the arena of breaking stigma, sharing our stories over, reaching our hand out to the next person that's needing help, because it's always,
you sparked for me, like, cause it's a spiritual, my recovery is very spiritual. Like, I didn't have any sort of faith. I didn't have any sort of God. I grew up Catholic. I immediately knew I didn't want anything to do with that. But now I have this higher power that I like connect with, talk to, have a constant dialogue with, and my higher power is just positive energy, because I can see examples of it anywhere, and I can create more of it anytime I want. But I heard someone say that religion is for people who are afraid of going to hell. Spirituality is for people who have already been there. And like, that's so like what you said about like, I don't regret. There was a phase in my sobriety I regretted, like, why didn't I get sober when I turned 20, not 30? Like, I could have been on billboards. I could have, done all these things. But it's like, no, like, I don't regret it now, because it led me to this moment, having this dialogue with you. If you go back and start tweaking things, you might be living in a timeline where you get hit by a bus at 24. Like, life is fragile. Life is beautiful, but it's fucking turbulent sometimes. And like, if you're here now, not in chronic pain, like, you're doing pretty great, like, but that's where I have to come from. Like, when I like tap into gratitude and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Beautifully put. Okay. So, wow, you are, I mean, considering what you do for a living, it doesn't surprise me that you are such a concise communicator and storyteller. But it is very easy talking to you, and I love that. So next, I wanted to ask you about comedy, right? So where did that come from, right? Did it develop kind of because you were funny and you were like, I can make a living out of this? Or did you, as a kid, just know that's what you wanted to do?
I did not know I wanted to do stand-up. As a kid, I was like definitely like mimicking things I saw in TV and film, like Home Alone lines. Like, and I was like good at, like, I'd make adults laugh. And I think making people laugh was a first deflector of like, don't notice I'm gay, or like, don't notice I'm different. Like, I'm good at this. Like, I'm entertaining. And I got into musical theater. I did musical theater from 10 to 18. And then I studied, 10 to 22, I guess. I studied musical theater in college. But I always knew I wanted to do TV and film. So I came out here, found TV and film very daunting. And then comedy. I was introduced to stand-up. Sarah Silverman was one of the first stand-ups I was like, wow, that's magical. Like, what I just saw was magical. And then I started doing that. I felt like I had like a little bit more control of my comedy career than like acting in TV and film, because it's just like a very like volatile, not that stand-up comedy is not, but I got to like be on stage live, which was what I was used to. I got to kind of like, I was in more control because I could write a joke in the day and perform it at night and see what happened, but comedy is a very it can be a very dark place. We're all on our own, literally our own journeys. Like, we are on stage alone. We travel alone. We're lone wolves. And like, I always say jokingly that comedians are either in active addiction or recovery. Like, there's no, at least when the good ones, I feel like good ones, like that from an early age, you have to find what's funny in a dark situation. So you have to have like a worldview that is so fucked up in order, I think, to really have a handle on making things funny. You know what I mean? So like there's all
It makes sense. Yeah.
this torment I can pull from both before I started drinking and then when I was drinking, that I was like, oh, looking back, that's crazy. And like it's funny because, I'm better now.
hmm And your career would you say, has taken off since
Yeah.
recovery?
I owe everything. It's interesting because like of course the negative voice of me says, well, like something would have happened anyway, like even if you didn't get sober, maybe, but like the time, money, and energy I got back alone popped me up. And then I got a perspective change. I got friends who really do show up for me. I got to become a friend who really showed up for people. That's what I should be focusing on.
Yeah.
I got a mentor who like cares about me. I found people who like can relate to me. And it's because of the person I've become, not because of the person I used to be. It's like when I see a comic get on stage and his whole thing, it's always a guy, it's about being stoned. Like all the jokes are about being stoned. And I'm like, put me to sleep. I am bored to tears. Like, God help the people that they relate to this guy's whole set. Cause I'm like, I perceive it now. Now I'm sounding like a judgy, sober person. But like having been there and having not been there for 6 years, I know how much more there is on this side of the coin than, you can only be
Absolutely.
high for, you can only numb so much before you stop having a human experience.
Ooh, that's so good and so true. Um, okay, I have got a few questions to wrap things up for you. I would love to know who your top role models are in comedy and in recovery.
Oh my God, that's really tough. In
Should I narrow
comedy,
it down? Should I narrow it down to the top three for each?
yeah, I'll just say, yeah, top three, that's better.
Okay.
So, well, comics, I'm just gonna list people that inspire me and that
Okay.
I get excited about, and they're all women. Well, no, they're not all women, but they're mainly women. Like Amy Schumer and Sarah Silverman were early influences for me.
Mhm.
And then there's a girl, Beth Stelling. She's just fantastic. She's become a friend. And I owe another one is Fortune Feimster.
I
And I don't
love
think any of
Fortune.
these, oh my God, she's so great. And Nikki
Yeah.
Glazer. And like half of them are people I have in my phone that I text with now. And it's so surreal to me that they are people I adored when I was drunk at home on YouTube watching
hmm
clips. And
hmm
now we're hugging when we see each other and like catching up and like shooting compliments. And like I'm getting to ask advice. And it's like very, oh, my nose started to tingle like I was going to cry. It's very surreal, and I owe that to sobriety, like period. And end of story. Like drunk Zach might have been like a funny story for one of them, like how crazy I was acting in a green room.
Sure.
But
Sure.
this one got to go to Fortune's wedding. You know what I mean? Like,
How awesome.
yeah, I
That is
mean,
really, really neat.
and I still have those moments though, like, cause we want ourselves dead half the time. The way thoughts creep in,
Right? Yeah.
I
Yeah.
go, she just invited me to, like out of pity. You know what I mean? Like she just like she knows I like need it. But it's like that's not true. That's not true. It's just like
Yep.
so interesting that like my addiction is still scratching at the door.
That's right.
I'm just like I'm replacing my wooden door with like a steel door, and I'm like I barely notice the scratching. Like
Okay. You just, oh, I'm so glad you mentioned that. All right. So you have hit, struck some gold with your career. And I love watching your journey. I've already mentioned how much I enjoy your professionalism and what you do. I can't wait to, watch you go further, do more things and bigger, greater things. But I think that everything that you've done has absolutely been earned. And like you said, talking right now in reality is earned and almost 100% sure, possible because of sobriety.
Yeah.
But imposter syndrome. Okay, that's what you were just talking about. And I love that you touched on it. I want to bring it up because it's something that is so real and it affects every damn one of us. All of us normal people, all of us lowly normal lay people, like we have imposter syndrome and we're like, I don't know, I got this promotion by accident. I got this, whatever. But like I love hearing that even at your level in, as a public figure, you also talk through and just
Of
share that
course.
you
I
have
mean,
that.
and like going back to the beginning with making your bed esteemable acts, like it it it's all about like feeding your subconscious good thoughts and like good vibes and like good actions, like being of service, helping people. Like you really have to build up yourself and or even more simply treat yourself like you perceive your friends. Like if a
Mm-hmm.
guy like is rude to my friend that he's dating, I'm like, fuck that guy, delete his number, you're too good for him. You know what I mean? Like you need to do that for yourself and be like,
Mm-hmm.
you work hard, you deserve an afternoon of Netflix, or you work hard, you deserve you're right where you're supposed to be. You're right where you're
That's right.
supposed to be. I'll say that. Like everything's happening for a reason and like your actions guide you. So
Yep.
like do what you can,
So true. Okay. Recovery role models.
Oh my god, okay. I mean, the person who jumps out of my head is first my sponsor
Mm.
because I heard him speak and he had what I wanted. He was like a successful gay man in entertainment and he was and continues to be so kind to me. He's someone who
Mm.
nudges instead of demands. Like I hear these horror stories of like sponsors like getting phone calls like I'm gonna kill myself and they're like call me back after you do it, click, and it's like oh my god, like
Right.
if someone said something like that to me I would probably leave the program. I'd be like
Yeah.
those people are crazy. This man
Mm-hmm.
nudges me in early sobriety. He'd pick me up because I didn't have a car and he'd take me to like lunch and he'd just let me talk and he'd offer suggestion and I take it more and more and now I know what he would say to everything. But so he's my number one. I'm trying to think of like other people who I love that Russell Brand has made his recovery so known. And
Mm-hmm.
same with Dax Shepard. He speaks very openly. And I think Dax actually had a relapse recently, but his
Yeah.
podcast, it always kind of like works its way in
Yep.
to his, because like any of us, like it's, I don't know if this is the thing for you. It's often hard for me not to talk about my sobriety because it takes up so much of my consciousness, from
Absolutely.
going to meetings, to
Yep.
talking to my sponsors, talking to sponsees. What are you doing? Oh, I'm going to a meeting. And like, for what? What's at 7:30 a.m. on a Saturday? I'm like, AA. And they're like, oh, good for you. I'm like, it is, it is what it is. And I'm trying to think of other, like, I'm sure, like, well, I'm glad you asked this question because I guess I don't, Lana Del Rey is sober and I just love her.
What?
I love her music
I did
so
not
much.
know that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how often she talks about it, but she is sober and she's such like a goddess and I just love her music. And like for someone to write such beautiful music, so fraught with like using and like stories kind of abuse and stuff like that,
Yep.
she's turned a really dark past into a beautiful piece of art. I guess I was at the Hollywood Bowl 2 summers ago maybe, and it was just like one of my best nights, and sober. I remember I remember all of it. No one had to guide me to the bathroom or like, I didn't hook up with some guy in the parking lot. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I might have if the right guy asked, but like, it wasn't my goal.
Exactly. So the wrong intentions and substances were not driving the boat.
Yeah, yeah.
I am so glad that you shared that with me because I love Lana and that I mean that every again every person you find out that's on this same journey is just exciting for us to to hear about that and very, very cool. So, all right, I feel like you're gonna have one of these prepared. I didn't ask you this ahead of time, but I would love to know, um, what is your most awkward moment that's happened in sobriety that you feel like is appropriate enough to talk about on here?
Oh God. Okay. So I actually think I have like a defense mechanism for myself where when someone asks me like, "What's the most awkward thing that's ever happened to you?" I have blocked it out. So I'm like, nothing comes to mind actually. But I will say, I messing up, quote unquote. The
Hmm.
more sober I get, is more embarrassing. Like it's so embarrassing to me when I do something messy
Yeah.
because like I know better. Like I know better. And like I don't do many messy things now, but yeah, I can't think of an awkward. I promise you, I've done a million awkward things. But I just I look forward to a life in which they become so few and far between. I don't need to hold on to them. You know.
That's
Sorry,
it's funny
that was a lame answer, but
it's perfectly fine. It's what it's meant to be. And it's so funny that you say that because my husband, who is a normie, he could not be more of a normie. Um, he oftentimes he's a fast thinker, a fast doer, a fast everything. And I am by nature a more slow person, but sobriety has also slowed me down even more because of just what you said. Like, I don't want to have to clean up any more of the wreckage of my past. I hate having to apologize. I hate having to admit that I had time to contemplate doing something right, but I still chose to do it the wrong way and hurt someone. And
you jogged one for me. It was an awkward exchange. I was getting my car from valet, which already is so crazy because I didn't
yeah,
used to have a car. I never used to fathom using valet. I was in Palm Springs. I was hot and miserable, and I perceived it to be that the valet was helping someone before me. And I like snapped at him and I said something like cunty. It probably is not as bad as I think it was, but it was cunty. I like snatched my keys. I don't think I tipped him because I was like, I'll show this kid,
right,
this probably 19 or 20-year-old person. And I got about half a block away before I was like, absolutely not. I cannot leave this situation like that. And I did a long turnaround because the blocks in Palm Springs are like 2 miles long, it feels like.
right,
Went all the
yeah,
way back around, pulled up to the valet guy again, and I was like, I just want to say, I'm apologize for the way I just spoke to you. You did not deserve that. I have no good excuse. Please accept. And I gave him $20. And I was like, please accept this. Like, and if there's anything else I can do, now's the time to tell me. And he's like, oh my God, no, like people get mad all the time. Like he could not have been chiller, calmer, cooler, nicer. And I was like, haha, this stupid bitch has a lot farther to go. And I mean myself when I say this stupid bitch, because it's like, I'm twice this guy's age and I'm like embarrassed,
right,
But
right.
yeah.
Mm, such a great point. Oh man. I think a lot of us have some stories like that where we just let our temper fly.
Oh,
But oh my gosh. Okay, so wrapping things up, I just want to ask, is there anything coming up for you? Are you on tour right now? Anything you want to talk about in the world of your world?
like I have like so many little projects that are like so close to fruition. But
Yeah.
I will say, like, if you want to follow me, Zach Noe Towers everywhere, ZACHNOETOWERS. That's where I post most on like Instagram and stuff like that. But I have a sketch comedy show that's almost done. It's like 5
Awesome.
episodes, and each one it's very queer. Like there's an episode on twinks, daddy issues, drugs, dick pics, and open relationships. Like those are the themes. So that's almost out. And then I have like a late night radio show that is in development, and that's
Awesome.
So just like keep the vibes flowing, the good vibes flowing.
Absolutely.
For me. Yeah.
Absolutely. Love that. Love hearing the good stuff in the works. All right. Last thing, I always like to ask our guests, if somebody, for the people who have listened and connected with something that you said today, what final word of encouragement would you like to leave with them?
Oh man. Be patient. Be patient with yourself and with others. Treat yourself with kindness. Treat people around you with kindness, and even treat people you perceive to not deserve it with kindness. And start practicing gratitude for the things you have, which I've been told is make a list of things you had today that you would like to wake up with tomorrow. So if you're patient, you practice love and gratitude, I think that's a really great place to start.
Ooh, I like that challenge.
Yeah.
Making a list.
Oh
Making
my God.
a list of things you'd like to wake up with tomorrow.
Thousands of things. But I struggle. I do a list of 10 every night with my sober family, and I'll get to like 6 and I'll stall. And I'll be like, I don't know. It's like, it's just crazy. It's crazy.
Wow. Yeah, that's good. I'm going to do that. Awesome. Zach Noe Towers, thank you so much for your time. And this has been a true treat for me. One of my favorite conversations I've gotten to have on this show. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Absolutely. Thank you again for your time. And I'm going to close out the way I always do and remind everyone that it's never too late to start loving yourself. You're only one decision away from a completely different life. And happy National Recovery Month to everyone.
For more information on today's episode, check out the show notes. Recovery Stories is brought to you by Promises Behavioral Health's Rooted alumni community. If you or a loved one are struggling, have questions, or ready to take the next step, call our admission center at 888-648-4098. Or visit us online at www.promisesbehavioralhealth.com. Our team is ready and waiting to answer the call for help. Whether you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please share with your friends. Follow, subscribe, and leave us a review. We are grateful for you and hope that you have been encouraged by today's episode. As always, remember you are only one decision away from a completely different life, and it is never too late to start loving yourself.